Hey everybody, and welcome back to Super Retro. As I'm sure you've heard, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is finally out, and in just a short period of time, it's quickly became the fastest selling game in the Zelda franchise. I got the game on release day, and I have thoroughly been enjoying revisiting this iteration of Hyrule. So without further ado, my name is Chris, and here are my initial thoughts of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Also, disclaimer, I will not be spoiling any major story points beyond the intro of the game, but I do want to discuss gameplay mechanics and how Hyrule may have changed a bit since we last saw it, so watch at your own risk. At the beginning of the game, we find Link and Zelda exploring beneath Hyrule Castle in these caves because they're searching for the source of a substance called gloom, which had been making many Hylians fall ill. For all those who've played Breath of the Wild, this substance is very similar to the Malice from the first game, except seemingly much worse. As they explore, they stumble across ruins and relics from an ancient civilization of earliest origin in Hyrule. Zelda introduces us to this civilization by calling them the Zonai, and according to legend, this civilization had godlike powers and lived in the sky. Deeper down, they discover a mural which seems to show the depiction of the origin of Hyrule as we know it today. Zelda said that Hyrule was born from a union with gods who had descended down and made a pact with the Hylians of that day. As Zelda keeps studying the murals, she makes a connection that perhaps those gods from ancient legend were actually the Zonai. Further along in the mural, we see a depiction of a very intimidating figure, and according to Zelda, this figure seems to be stealing something of incredible power from Hyrule. She says that if this figure is in fact the Demon King, then this mural must represent the Great War of Hylian legend, the Imprisoning War, and the events that led up to it. As they continue traveling down, you can see the gloom get thicker, its presence getting bigger, and finally they discover a very interesting chamber. In the center of this room is a red-haired mummy, which is being held by a glowing green hand coming from the ceiling. Beneath that hand, you can see gloom pouring from this mummy, and for people who've played the Zelda series before, you could probably make a good guess at who this mummy might be. After the hand falls, we see a small stone that rolls towards Zelda and begins glowing as she picks it up. Just as this orb glows, you can see the mummy start to reanimate and come back to life. And speaking of animation, this scene is awesome, so effective, and then you see the eyes turn bloodshot red and gloom flows out. Link, being the good knight he is, he tries to protect Zelda, and you can see that his health is almost completely depleted. This scene reminds me of Princess Mononoke visually, like when the protagonist gets that stuff all over his arm. But check this out. The gloom destroys the Master Sword. This is the sword imbued with the power of the goddess that was made to seal Ganon away, to seal the Demon King away. And for most of the series, it's the only weapon that we know of that can do so. Seeing this weapon destroyed so easily is pretty jarring for a fan of the series who's played most of the games, and it sets up a really cool premise. We then see Ganon shoot gloom up into the top of the cave, and just like in the trailer, we see Hyrule Castle start lifting from the ground. The chamber begins falling in, we see Ganon's body float into the shadows below. We see that Link now has a really hurt arm, and Zelda falls backwards into the pit. Link attempts to save her, but unfortunately she keeps falling, and we see her body engulfed in a yellow light and disappear. And then we see Link, who was saved by that mysterious glowing green arm. As Link wakes up, we notice that this green arm has fused itself with Link and saved him from losing his arm. Link then takes this broken Master Sword and his newly fused arm and heads out, beginning this new journey. Immediately after you run out of the cave, you notice we are actually in the sky. Just as in the trailers, you can see there are tons of sky islands around, and this is just one of the new great things about this new Hyrule. Immediately, the game asks you to jump from this sky island and fall down, and this is actually a new gameplay mechanic that you'll use quite often. In the first game, you did have the paraglider and, like jumping off mountains and high places, but in this game, it is much more intense as you'll be jumping from much higher places. And another thing I really like is they added this dive feature, which lets you dive much faster from falling. And while this isn't like realistic from real life physics or whatever, because real people, if they dove into water like that, they would absolutely not survive. This is a great feature and it helps getting around. But do be careful though, as if you hit the ground, results may be much worse. The first Sky Islands serve as a tutorial of sorts, and you can find yourself running around, gathering new materials, and getting used to the stamina wheel again, and you meet these things called constructs. Now, constructs are kind of like robots left over from the Zonai, and these constructs are servants of these Sky Islands. They protect the islands, so they can attack you, but they also have different functions where they may make materials or build things, but you'll see lots of these floating around on the islands. Much like the first game, Link has a tablet that he carries around. This has been given to one of the constructs to protect by Zelda, and this is the Pura Pad in this game. It's not quite like the Sheikah Slate, but it serves many of the same functions. Your goal after this is to find Princess Zelda, and Link makes his way to these ruins, which are conveniently called the Temple of Time, and I'm guessing this might be the first version of the Temple of Time in the sky. Link tries to get in, and he is not allowed. He doesn't have access, and you notice that there is a spirit lingering nearby. The spirit introduces himself as Rauru, and we find out he is the source of Link's right arm, the one that saved him and the one that was keeping Ganon at bay under the castle. And while a lot of mystery shrouds Rauru, he does help Link out by sending him on his way to find shrines on these Sky Islands. In these shrines are items that Link can use to hopefully get stronger and show enough strength to get into the Temple of Time. As Link enters the first shrine, Rauru appears and gives him an ability which goes into his arm, and these abilities are probably the best thing to come with Tears of the Kingdom. I'm not sure if the Zonai themselves all have these abilities or if it was just Rauru, but these abilities are pretty insane, and you've probably seen many clips from this game where people have just experimented with these abilities. The first ability is Ultra Hand, and Ultra Hand basically allows you to grab many items around, and you can pick them up and move them around just like you could with the Magnesis in the first game, but they don't have to be metal. They can be most any items, and you can stick them together and build all sorts of different things. Another thing worth noting is that there are pieces of Zonai technology just kind of laying around Hyrule, like this fan I've used to make this very bad vehicle. But I don't want to spoil what all those are, but just be aware that those are around, and experimenting with those is part of what makes this game so fun. Another ability Link gets is called Fuse, and with this ability, Link can actually take random items that are laying around and fuse them with his weapons. You can fuse items with your swords, your spears. You can fuse them with your shields. You can also fuse items with arrows, and it creates all sorts of cool options for combat. Another ability Link gets is called Recall, and with this ability, he can actually make objects go in reverse for a period of time. And as you can see here, I've just taken this board and lifted it up and dropped it, and since I make it go in reverse, I can use it as a makeshift elevator. This comes quite in handy throughout the game, and there are many ways you can experiment using this, but it's another great ability. And the fourth main ability is called Ascend, and with this, you can essentially jump through the ceiling in many places to get to the top of different platforms and things. You can use this in caves, under buildings, and I've seen some very promiscuous TikToks using this with the statues in the game. This is the ability I think I forget about the most. Like, I just tend to climb things and use ladders and stuff, but it is super helpful, and don't forget about it because sometimes it is necessary. While I'm at it, I'm going to talk about some other features in the game. As you can see, Hestu's back, and Korok seeds are also back. In the first game, you had to use Korok seeds to upgrade your shield, weapon, and bow arsenal so you can get more items, and you have to do the same in this game. Now, some people love this idea and some people hate it because there are actually more Koroks in this game than there were in the first game, and there are many tumultuous puzzles and things you have to solve to get Koroks to give you their seeds sometimes. Some people have been torturing Koroks on TikTok, and I find it hilarious. Similar to the first game, you have to find these towers which will actually shoot you into the sky and help you to survey the area. So this is how you gain access to the full map. And while it seems monotonous because we've already discovered this map before, I guarantee you this Hyrule is very different from the first game. I find myself getting lost quite a bit. And then seeing the sky islands pop up on the map is super helpful for navigation. As you can tell here too, using these towers shoots you very far into the sky, and this helps with navigation so much. And though I've mentioned it briefly before, these sky islands are certainly worth exploring, and they're quite in depth. I think they took the idea from Skyward Sword and they really elaborated on it and made it feel natural. It doesn't feel so separate from the ground below. And these sky islands have a uniqueness to them. They have their own type of environments, their own vegetation and things. You'll see new plant life and also new tools and things, and they're certainly worth exploring. Now here's the real gag. I'm not going to spoil the story or anything, but if you don't want to get spoiled on a major gameplay thing that is new, I suggest either skipping ahead or just getting out of this video. The major gag in this game, to me, is that there's not only one new land to explore in the sky, there's also a land below. When you first come down to the surface, you'll notice there are chasms all over Hyrule. And you can't actually get to the bottom of these at first, but when you can, you'll see that there's a whole new world to explore below as well. And this place is no joke. Gloom exists down here just as it does on the surface, and it does take away the player's health. But it doesn't just take away the player's health. When you are underground, if you lose health to the gloom, you can actually lose hearts permanently until you go back to the surface. This makes exploring the underworld much more difficult. And on top of that, you're actually surrounded by darkness in much of the underworld. You often have to use things called bright bloom seeds and actually throw these seeds to illuminate the world around you. And you can find, similar to the towers on the surface, you find these roots that you can light up and they will illuminate sections of the map. But getting around down here is not easy. As far as the monsters go down here, I'll just let you discover them for yourselves. And speaking of monsters, the amount of enemies in this game has increased quite a bit. You'll find yourself facing enemies that are much larger, faster, bigger spawns, things like that. You have some of the same enemies from the first game and lots of new ones as well, but hopefully with the new gameplay mechanics, you can get around this quite easily. One thing I want to point out that I actually didn't like about the first game is that you didn't explore many caves at all. And so this game has plenty of caves and cave systems, and these are really cool to explore. So I'm super excited that they've added these in, and I hope you find all the secrets lurking within them. Okay, so now that we've got all that out of the way, what are my opinions of the game? Do these gameplay mechanics really help? Do I like the story? What do I think, honestly? I'm going to give you the honest truth here. When I first played this game, I have to say, the tutorial in the sky was quite long to me. I found myself getting a bit bored, to be honest, and I actually fell asleep a few times playing this. And you will find yourself spending a few hours up in the sky. Not saying that the sky is bad. I'm just saying the tutorial, it really didn't catch me the way I hoped it would. You spend much of your time just trying to put together items and figure a way around these islands, but it didn't really capture me the way I hoped it would. That being said, once you get out of the sky, it's a whole different story for me. Nintendo has knocked it out of the park with this one. The exploration in this game is incredible. I mean, the detail in this world, I'm in awe as I play more and more. I find myself, just searching all over the world and looking in every nook and cranny for secrets and things like that. And I've actually avoided the main story for hours and hours and hours and still had a blast playing this game. What I do know about the story so far is it seems to have a darker turn, and I'm really enjoying it much more than the first game. To me, it seemed like the story of the first game was almost an afterthought. I'm sorry to say that, but it's just how I felt. But I can't say that for this game. It seems like they've really planned out this story, and I think it's going to be one that fans will clamor over for years. I can't tell you how happy I am to see Ganondorf back. I know a lot of people don't like his human form. They like just seeing Ganon as this evil pig monster thing, but I think seeing him in that human form really makes a difference. But there are some theories, and I don't know if these are valid or not. I haven't beaten the game. So let me share some theories I've heard and some things that I'm thinking. So the first theory I heard way back is that Ganon isn't actually Ganon, it's actually Demise, because this game actually, it goes back into the lore from way beyond into the Skyward Sword realm, and it's actually, I believe, going into lore from before that. The Zonai are supposedly the first tribe, the people that started Hyrule. So to see them take it back that far, I could absolutely see this being about Demise. Or maybe it's just Ganon, having the spirit of Demise or whatever. Another theory is that they're going to go in a different direction as far as the lore of Zelda goes after this game. I totally agree that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom seem to be like one game in the series that have combined many of the timelines together, and this seems to be like a turning point in the series. Now, does that mean that Nintendo will get rid of the same story we've heard of Link, Zelda, and Ganon all being reincarnated and this story happening over and over again? Will they change that? I'm not sure, but from what I do know, we've seen the Master Sword get destroyed. It's not powerful enough to defeat Ganon. Maybe it'll be restored later on in the story, and maybe it'll be strong enough to defeat him. I'm not sure. But some people think that we'll actually beat Demise, and once we beat Demise, that the curse will be lifted, and that the Zelda series might take a new turn. Now, I know some have beaten the game by this point. I haven't, and I don't want to know spoilers, so please don't put those in the comments or anything. But I think that's an interesting take on it, and I'm not sure that Nintendo would go that route, but it is interesting. One theory I have, and just minor spoilers here. So Zelda, she disappears as she's falling in the cave at the beginning of the game, and she goes into the past, actually. She goes into the past to when the Zonai were founding Hyrule. I have a theory that Zelda altered the timeline, that she altered the future, which, of course, anytime you do time travel, that's always the risk. If you go into the past, you risk changing the future. But the reason I say this is because everywhere you go in Hyrule, there's no Sheikah stuff left from the first game. There are no remnants of shrines. There are no remnants of the divine beasts. And I've only been to one of the 4 main towns or 4 main civilizations you go to. I went to the Rito village, and they said that there's still the perch for Bob Meadow or whatever, but they didn't talk about it being a place where a divine beast stayed. It's so strange to me, and I have the feeling that Zelda may have altered the timeline to where maybe this Sheikah technology didn't exist. Maybe they didn't need it because they had the Zonai tech. I'm not sure. It's just very strange. I guess it's also possible that Nintendo just didn't want to deal with the remnants of the Sheikah stuff. So, I don't know. I guess I'll see by the end of the game. I also have another theory. I think that there's either a Zelda puppet or an evil Zelda. And the only reason I say that is because when you first get down to the surface, you see that Zelda's appeared somewhere, and she kind of goes into the distance, and she's quiet. She doesn't say anything. She disappears. And I didn't really think much of that. I thought, maybe that's her spirit leaving remnants behind or something. But the Blood Moon occurred. And in the Blood Moon, Zelda isn't really warning Link or pleading the way she did in the first game. When you listen to her voice, she sounds really sinister. So I'm pretty sure there's something going on there, but again, I haven't played too far into the story, so I'll find out. But yeah, that basically wraps up how I feel about this game. I am thoroughly enjoying the story, I'm thoroughly enjoying the world, and it's not monotonous, it doesn't feel repetitive. The world has changed quite a bit from the first game, and there is plenty to do. I think gameplay alone, this game could deserve Game of the Year, but adding the story and the music and all the, the Zelda stuff that we love into it, it just makes it golden. It's wonderful. I'm really curious to see where the story goes, and if, will this game keep my attention, or will I get pissed off and leave it? I'm really curious to see just what happens there. But I also want to know your opinion, Jenna. What are you thinking of the game so far? Have you beaten it, etc.? But I do ask, please do not spoil things in the comments. This game is still pretty fresh. I know some people have beaten it, but I really don't want to get that ruined for newer players and myself. But let me know in the comments what you're thinking so far. Also, I'd love to know what other games you'd like to see me play and review and things like that. I think once I beat this game, I might do a proper review just to finish up my final thoughts. But for now, I'm going to enjoy it for what it is. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you haven't yet, I would highly recommend trying this game out for yourselves. And if you'd like to support me, make sure you like and subscribe down below. I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.